everybody, and welcome to Friday Night Huddle. I'm Dave Bacon, ready for week 2 of high school football across the state of Ohio with my Huddle teammates. Dan Labbe from cleveland.com, Nate Cline from cleveland.com. We are getting ready for week 2 of the high school football season all across the Buckeye State. Here are the games that we are covering tonight, and we've got some good ones, headlined by that St. Ignatius-Menor matchup. You see Strongsville, Hudson, Avon coming back from Florida with a big win, taking on Olmsted Falls, Mooney and Hoban, Solon and Twinsburg, Euclid and Aurora. A couple of Catholic schools out Akron way, St. Vincent-St. Mary, Walsh Jesuit. Then a couple of Catholic schools out Parma way, Holy Name and Padua. Down in Cincinnati, St. Xavier and Coleraine. And then Austin Town Fitch against the Brunswick Blue Devils of Mark Pinzone, a former assistant now taking over, kind of back to the future for the Blue Devils. Guys, we'll start with you, Dan. Which game kind of grabs your attention of the Week 2 menu, if you will?
I'm looking at Euclid and Aurora. Euclid comes in 1-0, got a big win against Glenville last week, jumped out to that big lead, 32-0 after the first quarter, and then kind of hung on C.J. Hale. This is going to be his second start at quarterback as a varsity player. He did pretty well last week, 3 touchdowns, 2 on the ground. A lot of weapons for Aurora. Turnovers were the story. 5 turnovers, 7 penalties, including a penalty on a 23-yard run by their quarterback, Evan Fromweiler, that would have put them in a position to maybe win that game against Solon. It was a 15-14 loss. So I don't think it's a must-win for Aurora, but they probably want to win this one if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive.
Yeah, you start looking at it, and you know they have some tough games coming up in conference, so certainly a little bit of urgency. I won't say it's must-win, but some urgency for the Greenmen. Nate, which one grabs your attention?
I'm looking at this Solon and Twinsburg game. It's going to be a home game for the Twinsburg Tigers. We're going to get a little bit more into that game later, but what I'm looking at is the running backs from both ones. We have Cameron McLean from Twinsburg, and then also Thomas Wilkes from Solon. Both of these players had over 100 yards last week in their games, but I'm really curious to see how these running backs are going to fare tonight in week 2 here. So.
A good look at warm-ups going on as the Solon Comets getting ready for the Twinsburg Tigers. Tigers started a lot of sophomores last year. Those guys are now juniors. A nice win in week 1, trying to keep it rolling. Big test for them against a perennial playoff team in the Comets.
And what was so interesting about Twinsburg last week was that they played 2 quarterbacks, and going into camp over the summer, I kept saying to Coach, I was like, man, who are you going to start this week? I mean, who are you going to start in week 1? He's like, well, we're not sure yet, and so I don't know if necessarily they're trying out a couple quarterbacks this week, or they saw something good in week 1 and they want to keep running with it. So,
they did 2 quarterbacks last year. One of them graduated, and then Adam Vandemotter, the kid that was a sophomore who played a little bit, now the junior, so he's one of the guys that gets a first look there. Obviously, a game that grabs everybody's attention is that St. Ignatius game against the Menor Cardinals, and what kind of makes that really interesting is the Menor Cardinals are a team that's very pass-oriented, and the strength of this year's St. Ignatius team is that defensive secondary with some veteran guys in Cameron Toppin and Justin Sands back there. So very interesting matchup. Teams that were very impressive in week 1 winning as well.
Yeah, Cameron Toppin had a couple big plays against Hoban in that game, and a 17-3 win. And when you're breaking in a new quarterback, it's it's good to get that defensive help. And for for Menor, we know what Menor can do. We know they can throw the ball, but it was the ground game that really helped them a lot last week against Massillon.
Absolutely, and this early, Menor's had their struggles early to start the game, and we were even watching that. We were like, man, when is Menor going to get off and rolling? And eventually, they started finding holes in Massillon's defense and started taking advantage of that. But this game, this Ignatius and Menor game, we're going to be talking about that quite a bit tonight, but a lot's at stake with the playoffs, even though it's week 2, but we're also looking at the quarterback matchup here with Tatis Tatarunas and Kyle Hall, who's starting this season for St. Ignatius Wildcats. So I'm curious how this is going to match up. Obviously, we were talking about how many points these 2 teams put up about just maybe a couple years ago, I believe it was.
Yeah, Tatis Tatarunas set a school record in his first start. And keep in mind, that's the school that had Mitch Trubisky tearing things up, and before that, Bart Tansky set a school record for passing yardage in his first start against the St. Ignatius Wildcats a couple of years ago, 2 years ago. Last year didn't fare quite as well against the Wildcats, but he put up big numbers in that first game. Dan, you and I were at that game, saw that. It was quite a show.
Yeah, and it's funny to see the contrast between how these two teams kind of use their quarterbacks and break in their quarterbacks. If you're going to be a quarterback for Menor, you're going to hit the ground running. You're going to throw the football a ton. St. Ignatius can kind of protect their quarterback a little bit. Chuck Kyle is not afraid to run the football. He's not afraid to rely on his defense. Maybe run some clock a little bit and help his quarterback out. So it's always interesting to see the contrast when these two teams play. But we also know, as you mentioned, when they start scoring, they don't stop.
And just as well as we were talking about the quarterbacks early, you exactly said it right on the head, nail on the head. These running backs are going to come down to it. Chris Edmond and Mark Babinski from St. Ignatius. It's going to be really on them to have a much better game than they did last week. Now, obviously, Edmond had over 100 yards last week, but Babinski on the other side, he was limited by Hoban's defense. So I'm a little curious about how these running backs are going to fit into the equation tonight, especially when we're thinking about they're going to put up a lot of points.
Well, down south, there's another big matchup is St. Xavier, the team that beat St. Ignatius in the state championship game, taking on another big, powerful Division I school in Colerain. And we've already got some scoring action from that game. And here it is the handoff, and it's Ethan Stout. Ethan Stout takes it in for a touchdown, 57 yards, and that's the way you start a game.
Yeah, I think you'll take that if you are. You want to start quickly in these big matchups. You want to have the other team chasing you, and you'll take that all day.
Great cutback there to get into the end zone. And you see the pink jerseys, or the pink pants there for St. Xavier. They do a lot with breast cancer awareness. So getting a little early start on that, but great start for Colerain. That's team lost a tough game 7-3 to LaSalle last week. So you're starting that Division I, Region 4. You need to start moving if you're the Colerain Cardinals.
And your schedule, Nate, your schedule's always so tough. You got LaSalle, you got Xavier, you've got all these teams just down your schedule that, it's real easy to start 0-2 with these opponents, but it digs you a pretty deep hole.
And it's a good sign to see Colerain got on the scoreboard first, because I'm really curious about Colerain's defense and how they're going to hold Chase Wolf, Wisconsin commit, this tonight. But Dan Bolden is going to be somebody key in their defense in Colerain, how they're going to be able to limit Xavier or minimize what they can for scoring. But the team didn't give up that many yards last week, and so I'm kind of curious how Colerain's defense is going to be. Yeah,
the tough loss for Colerain last week, just 7-3 to a very good Cincinnati LaSalle team, three-time defending state champs in Division II. So a good start for the Colerain Cardinals. Touched on it a little bit, another game that we're keeping an eye on. Great start for the Avon Eagles. They go down to Orlando, Florida, and they beat a perennial playoff team from the state of Florida, Merritt Island from Daytona Beach. They played at the Orlando complex down at the Wide World of Disney. So late rally, that's on the road, hostile environment. Great start for Mike Elder's Eagles.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing you want to start off with. Give yourself a tough first week, and to make that trip to Florida, to have to take your guys on the road and win that game. Ryan Malloy at quarterback now for them. They always seem to be able to find that next man up in the quarterback rotation, and just a really impressive debut for Avon.
And here's a look in as they're getting underway, taking on the Olmsted Falls Bulldogs. Oh. And a nice tackle, a good return for Olmsted Falls.
And our quarterback, Teddy Rudensky, I'm kind of curious how he's going to play for the Olmsted Falls tonight. He did fairly well last week, and so he's going to have an opportunity to be able to show it off against Avon. This is a potential Division II, Region 6 regional playoff preview, possibly. And we're going to see what happens. And maybe, who knows, this conference title may come down to these two teams, even though it's early week 2.
And one thing that Olmsted Falls doesn't want to do against Avon is fall behind like they did last week against Brecksville.
And that was David Orlando with that saving tackle. A good return by the Bulldogs as they get the ball out to the 43-yard line of Avon. So good start as just underway there.
And now, mind you, the quarterback was a dual threat again last week. While he didn't have over 100 yards on both sides, running and passing, he did fairly well. 8 of 14 passes for 78 yards and a TD and the 52 yards on the ground. So
incomplete pass, pretty good coverage there by the Eagles as that one was forced through there.
And they're missing a guy like Spencer Linville, who graduated last year. Their big workhorse back, rushed for 1,000 yards. But we saw last week with Kradzinski. He's got Luke Lombardo that he can kind of lean on. They accounted for 21 of 22 unanswered points in that comeback against Brecksville. We know this is a tough football team in Olmsted.
And don't you think Olmsted Falls didn't forget this, I think it was a 42-19 loss they had against Avon last year. So I'm a bit curious, you know, did that kind of play into mind, or they're going to come out and try to win this game?
What we've seen a couple times now is when you tackle an Olmsted Fall Bulldog, you feel it. Yeah, you're not just dishing out punishment, you're taking it. These guys are going to be physical and tough and try and run you over.
Nice pickup, good run. So they advance it down to the 32-yard line of the Avon Eagles. You see a good look there at just how tightly packed they are, and they want to run the football. It's not going to be easy to run the football against the Eagles.
Yeah, no, that was a nice job staying home by the defensive player, but you've got to make that tackle. So now instead of, you know, a 4-yard loss, it's no gain, and you know that is a big difference against a team that wants to run the ball.
Again, looking in at the Avon Eagles taking on the Olmsted Falls Bulldogs. Week 2 action.
And they're more than happy to keep that ball out of Avon's hands, as you can see, already trailing.
That's always a game plan,
yeah.
You know, is to run the football and keep that quick strike Eagle offense off the board. As Avon scored on their initial possession. You saw the kick return that got it into Avon territory by the Bulldogs.
And just a little bit of background on both of these teams. You know, as well as Avon did in the conference going undefeated, they lost in the first round to Avon Lake. That's kind of scary to think. And then you have Olmsted Falls, who made all the way to the region finals. You know, so both of these teams, you know, have their share of experience. And so I'm a little bit curious just who's going to cancel out each other in this game here.
And that pass off the mark. So incomplete pass. So Olmsted Falls, a pretty decent job of trying to answer. You know that you want to eat the clock, obviously,
yeah.
Shorten the game if you're playing Avon, because that offense is awfully tough to stop. And they scored late to win against Merritt Island down in Orlando.
And you get that good special teams play to kind of start that drive off, and then you can't really do anything with it, so that's a little frustrating. But really what we saw there was Avon's defense. I mean, they were flying around. It looked like they were in a little bit of a 3-3-5. That's tough for guys on Olmsted Falls to kind of find their matchups, because that's what it's all about, find your matchup and win it. And we saw Avon kind of flying around and stuffing those run plays.
And you have to have a defense that can complement that offense. The quarterback from Avon, Ryan Mallow, had over 200 yards passing last week down in Florida, so I don't know if he had something great down to eat or drink before the game down in Florida, but he put on a heck of a performance. And so the defense, in short, has to be able to match that same intensity that the offense brings in. They can put up a lot of points in a short amount of time. So.
Another game we're keeping an eye on is that Hudson-Strongsville game. Hudson opened with a 20-7 win over Fitch, and you know Strongsville ran out to that 35-0 lead on Berea Mid-Park and then hung on for the win. The big story with Strongsville, Johnny Major, 6 touchdowns. The quarterback combined running and passing 6 touchdowns in week 1. Pretty good start.
Yeah,
we'll take that.
176 through the air, 167 on the ground, and you give Lucerino a dual threat quarterback like that, and he's going to find some ways to use that weapon and put some points on the board, because you know, we saw him do that at West Geauga when he had weapons like that, dual threat guys. He knew how to use them.
And don't you think that Hudson doesn't know about this kid either? I mean, I'm sure they're going to bring their intensity as well on defense. But just as well as I'm going to watch on defense, I'm going to be watching an offense. They do really well. Colt Palais down in Hudson had over 200 yards last week against Fitch. And so I'm a little curious, is the Explorers going to be able to perform that same act again tonight?
It'll be interesting. A couple years ago, Strongsville came in there in week 2 and beat Hudson. One of the years they went to the state semifinals, Strongsville beat Hudson in Hudson. So that was 2 years ago, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and this is one of those kind of milepost games for Strongsville as they try and dig out of where the program's been for a little bit. You go against a team like Hudson, a traditional power. Maybe this is your chance to get them, because I think there might still be some questions at quarterback for that team. I think they still need to see a little more out of Colt Palais. But that's still a very good team. You know what you're going to get out of Hudson. So if you can go and get that kind of marquee win this early in the year, you can start getting guys believing that maybe it's going to happen this year for you. Maybe it's not going to be down the road.
And Dan, don't you think that Hudson doesn't want these computer points as well? They play in Division II. They play in a very tough region, and so they need these points as much as Strongsville would like to have them to help themselves in Division I. So both teams are going to have to perform very well tonight, and we're just going to see what happens week 1.
Well, you know, it's going to be really interesting. A couple of the returning defensive players for Hudson banged up, actually out for the year. 2 of their lineman type. Dean Palumbo were injured last week, and Danny Saxon, who started and played really well, was injured in lacrosse season, so he's not even playing. So they're a little challenged. It'll be really interesting. We're going to step aside, take our first time out. As we head to break, we're going to take a look in down Cincinnati way. Big game going on. Colerain and X, we saw the long touchdown for the Colerain Cardinals. Friday Night Huddle will be right back here on cleveland.com and Spectrum Sports. Stay with us.
Shotgun again. Handoff, and they're met. They stop trailing short across midfield. Initially by Brigham.
Now he shoots it! What you live for lives here. We are Spectrum Sports, exclusively on Spectrum.
The Ohio Lottery's Partners in Education program has been recognizing students and teachers who shine both in and out of the classroom since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com and click on Supporting Education. Students in kindergarten through 12th grade are eligible to be academic all-stars. K through 12 teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible to be honored as the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery's Partners in Education, where stars shine.
This is it. Your big break. Your one shot. Your only chance. There are 2 outcomes. Make history or be history.
The home of high school sports. Spectrum Sports. Exclusively on Spectrum. Your team, your school. Spectrum Sports is your home for Flyers athletics. What you live for lives here. The television home of the Dayton Flyers. Spectrum Sports. Flyers volleyball, Sunday at 1 on Spectrum Sports. Exclusively on Spectrum.
Welcome back to Friday Night Huddle. I'm Dave Bacon, and we want you to get involved as always. We want you to tweet us your top plays. Hashtag FNH Top Plays. Again, hashtag FNH Friday Night Huddle Top Plays. And we will use them in our top 15 plays that is in the last segment of the show. And we're going to revisit last week's top 15 as you can vote for the top play and on cleveland.com. Let's take a look at the top 15 from a week ago as they were voted on. So checking in at number 15, Gahanna Lincoln quarterback Michael Lowry connects with Jerome Buckner, 12-yard touchdown catch. Lincoln defeated Westerville Central 24-3. Here's number 14, Cardinal Mooney quarterback Antonio Page. Look at this run. This is the one with the stiff arm at the end. Dan, you love this.
Oh, yeah. He has big man out in front, too, just running over guys, including his own teammates.
Let's take a look at number 13, Michael Lowry, scrambling all over the place and then puts Lincoln in a position for another score.
Not afraid to throw that ball up. Let his guys get it.
In number 12, Marcellus Blake, a touchdown run, 21 yards out, but Menor wins 49-14.
Yeah, it was a good start for Massillon. Not a great finish.
Norton's T.J. Moss. Take a look at this one.
This was a moment we thought they might run this in the end zone. And
Mr. Key.
Yeah.
Key Thompson tackles it and keeps him out of the end zone.
Yeah, the Ohio University commit there tackled him.
Number 10, Zach Antonio for North Royalton, and the Bears defeat North Ridgeville. 27 yards, spinning.
He wasn't going to be denied.
Got into the end zone. Now, number 9, Avon's Ryan Malloy finds Chris Mullins. This was in Orlando, 18-yard touchdown. That was the game winner against Merritt Island. Yeah, go ahead, celebrate, Eagles. You deserve it. North Ridgeville's Tyler Richmond finds Cannon Kerr, 65 yards. Take a look at that one.
Yeah, and he just found space. And he kept running.
Help the quarterback out.
Into the end zone, he got in. Number 7, this guy has speed to burn. Thomas Wilkes, 13 yards.
Yeah.
Comets beat the Greenmen by a point.
Yeah, he took everyone with his shoulder there on the way out.
North Royalton's defense shows up as well. Take a look at this. The safety. And they won by just 3 points. So that's a huge play there. Take a look at Cleveland Heights' Zaire Webb. Taking on Cardinal Mooney. Taking on blockers, defenders, everybody. It's a touchdown. But the Cardinals win it. Number 4, Chris Edmonds, the aforementioned Menor Cardinal. Oh, he can run.
Was the same hole on the field for Massillon earlier there? Did you guys? You just found the same one.
Where's that? It's a blocking scheme.
Big chunk of his 112 yards right there.
Number 3, Kyle Hall finds Maxwell Pike, and he finds the end zone. Wildcats win at 17-3. Nice pass by Hall. Now, number 2, 37% of the vote.
I thought he was in this. I thought he was in the end zone, but wait.
Robert Morgan rips it away, and he's gonna go. No, you didn't get the
On the first look, we
close,
thought
though.
it was.
That one guy in the back, though, he was excited.
Bulldogs rally to win that game 28-18. And then with 47% of the vote, Zane Reese finds Jeff Parker. 35-yard touchdown for Barberton. The Magic win 34-0. Again, this is how the cleveland.com viewers and web surfers voted. So that had 47% of the vote, 37% of the vote for the Robert Morgan strip that almost was a strip and a score. Again, you can vote. Go to cleveland.com. That'll be up tomorrow, early tomorrow. Or, better yet, tweet us the highlights from the game you're at. Doesn't take much. All you got to do is hit us up on Twitter, hashtag FNH for Friday Night Huddle, top plays. So hashtag FNH top plays. Tweet us the plays. We'll use them. And then get online and vote. And you could vote your play as the top play of the week. So some pretty big plays, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of big ones this week as well.
Yeah, we'll do it again at the end of this show and post it up at cleveland.com. And I'll tell you what, those are 15 really good plays. I thought the number 15 play was one of my favorites. That was I think that one might have gotten my vote, but hey, that's all right. I'm not going to question the democratic process here.
Well, you know, it was a Columbus area school, so there's that whole, Northeast Ohio pride thing going on there.
And then congratulations to the Barberton football team for taking number 1. It sounds like they pushed that video out and said, everyone please vote for this. But Zane Reese connecting with his receiver there, great job, great win for them to start the season as well. So,
Zane Reese, I told you guys the story. Yeah, I'm sitting there talking to their coach, and he goes, "Do you announce the games?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I have a new favorite high school football player in Northeast Ohio, quarterback Zane Reese." Well, recognize the voice.
You picked a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, that was actually that's a tough play for a quarterback because he had to kind of wait for that route to develop a little bit, and he had to throw to a spot as opposed to necessarily throwing to his man, and he was patient and had good protection and delivered the ball for a score.
Tell you what, had a heck of a year last year, and he started right back off again. So congratulations to the Barberton Magic. They win 34-0 last week. And Zane Reese and Brian Parker take home the top play. Guys, it's kind of interesting. Week 2, You know, Mentor starts with Massillon in week 1. They come back with St. Ignatius. And you know, Coach Trevisano and Tadas Tatarunas and those guys couldn't wait to get back on the field after missing out on the playoffs a year ago.
Oh, yeah, and they got off to that slow start last year. We
brutal
talked about
schedule, too.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot last week, but the thing is that schedule is brutal again this year. Massillon, St. Ignatius, they've got Glenville next week. They're at Strongsville, and we've talked about Strongsville, how maybe they're a better team than people expected. Brunswick, Medina. I mean, it doesn't get easy for Mentor, so they can't fall back on, you know, maybe they can get off to a slow start again and sneak into the playoffs. It didn't happen last year, and they don't have a lot of room for error here early.
And I can only assume how Coach is feeling, because when you have a quarterback that put over 500 yards up on the field a couple years ago against St. Ignatius, and then you miss the playoffs the following year, that's got to hurt. And so I know that, I'm sure he's sitting back, man, this team is really capable of going really far. But like you mentioned, they're in a tough region, and they've got to figure out a way how to get through these next 9 weeks now.
Well, you know, the interesting thing, weeks 2 and 3 a year ago, they played St. Ignatius and Xavier, the two teams that played in the Division I state championship game. Played Xavier really well. I believe it was 20-7, and it was an interception late in the game that was returned for a touchdown that made it, you know, they were going in to score and potentially tie the game, and Xavier intercepted it, took it back. So, you know, when you look at it even closer, they missed the playoffs, and the record wasn't what they wanted to, but there were really disappointing losses that added up for Mentor. So again, you know, Coach Trevisano came out and said, no excuses. We just got to play better early in the year.
Yeah, Nate, you mentioned the quarterback. When you have a quarterback that you trust, that you like, who's been very good for you going into his senior year, you've got to maximize what you have at that position, because next year you're going to have a new guy, and you just never know what's going to happen when you throw him into the fire. So, you know, maximize the time you have with the quarterback that you trust.
And don't forget, I mean, St. Ignatius, they're going to make it tough on these Cardinals and throwing that football tonight. They made it really difficult on the Hoban Knights in Hoban's season opener at home. And so I wouldn't put it past the Wildcats to try to make this a little difficult for the Cardinals as well. So,
you know, the interesting thing will be, if you look at it from St. Ignatius's perspective, they're going to give you a big dose of Mark Babinski early just to see if you can stop it. And you know, Mentor's been a prolific offense, and their defense has always been not quite where they needed it to be to get to the state championship. That's their ultimate goal. It's been a decent defense, so I'm sure that'll be an interesting early test for the Mentor Cardinals.
Yeah, and you know, they've got a guy in Noah Potter who's very good. Has MAC offers, Boston College offer too, I believe. So, you know, they have a guy they can rely on defensively, but it's got to be 11 guys, or, you know, 8 of 11 guys. You got to have a group of guys that you can trust, and that's what Coach Trevisano is trying to find.
So early going, St. Ignatius with a 3-0 lead. So the good news is the Cardinals held them out of the end zone. Bad news is you're down 3-0. Nate, you touched on Hoban. Hoban, tough loss, 17-3. Certainly no shame in losing 17-3 to the team that was runner-up in the state in Division I. They get a tough test again as they face a Cardinal Mooney team, and we saw how big they are and how they like to run the football, and they beat a pretty good Cleveland Heights team on the road in week 1. So interesting matchup for the Hoban Knights in a game they really kind of need to get things rolling.
And last week we saw Antonio Page. He did it with both his arm and his legs. I'm looking for these numbers: 208 yards rushing and passing for 73 to lead the Cardinals over Cleveland Heights. Cleveland Heights is not a very small team, so I'm just going to let everyone know who has never seen them in person. They're not a small team, and so Antonio Page being able to pick apart that Tigers defense was a pretty incredible feat. Now he's got to go face Hoban now. Hoban is a little bit more determined. They only were able to score 3 points last week in their season opener. I'm sure their fans are fired up for this game, and so are the Knights as well.
Well, our Ryan Isley is at that game, and he joins us on the phone. Ryan, what's going on with the Knights and the Mooney Cardinals?
Hey, guys, it's funny. Just as you mentioned that, Nate, and talk about Antonio Page tearing apart the Cleveland Heights defense last week, he kind of just did that to Archbishop Hoban. As I was on hold for you guys, Page just took a touchdown run, and it is about to be 7-7 if Youngstown Cardinal Mooney converts this extra point. They're actually going for the extra point now. Bad snap, and Hoban stops them, so it's going to be 7-6. Archbishop Hoban. And on this drive alone, Antonio Page was elusive. On a 4th and 12, I don't know if you guys have seen the highlight yet, he took off and he broke probably 5 or 6 tackles getting to the sideline, dove across the sideline to get to the first down marker just to pick up that first down.
All right, Ryan, we just saw the touchdown pass from Ham to Garrett Hauser. Pretty good pass by the freshman quarterback, and he struggled a little bit against St. Ignatius, but that looked like right on the money to his big-time receiver, Garrett Hauser.
It was a really good pass, and it was a really, really nice catch. And that's something that Garrett Hauser did a ton last year with Danny Clark throwing him the football. Hauser is that kind of guy. He can go up and get him if you just put it in the area. And that pass was set up because Hoban's run game tonight has been really good. Unlike last week, this week it has been Tyrus Dickerson getting most of the carries. He has 6 carries for 58 yards rushing already. And that pass from Ham was his second completion of the night. The first one went for negative yardage. So a great pass play, but again, the Hoban offense is using the run to open up the pass. And Nate, I know you were here last week, and you saw the Hoban defense not be able to get a lot of pressure on the quarterback and giving the quarterback all day to throw. Until that last drive, that was the exact opposite tonight. They have been all over the Youngstown Cardinal Mooney backfield on defense.
All right, Ryan Isley, we appreciate it. We will check back in with him. Of course, that game now tied up at 7-7. Obviously, Mooney, a completely different animal than St. Ignatius. They're going to run the football and try to bully you up front. So that'll be a really interesting matchup. Those are two very big and physical teams that like to run the football, being Hoban and the Cardinals as well. Yeah,
there are. I mean, there's maybe you can find some kind of similarity. And okay, you got to deal with St. Ignatius and their running game, but they don't run the ball like Mooney runs the ball. No. Ignatius will line it up and run at you, but not the way that Mooney does. They're going to run it every single play. It could be 3rd and 25, and they're going to run the ball, and they're going to expect to pick up that first down with a run. So this is going to be a big challenge for this night's team.
Danny Simoko and Andre McCoy, they were also players for the Mooney football team that got on the scoreboard as well as Antonio Page, who was also saw in the highlights as well earlier. But like we were talking about, this is a very a bruiser mentality team, and so Hoban, I mean, they're going to have to try to hang in there as long as they can here. They just finished the first quarter. They still lead by a point, but I'm curious to see how the squad is going to do. Mooney, very big squad. And
the thing they can't do is make the mistakes they made last week against St. Ignatius, because Mooney will do the same thing. When you make mistakes, Mooney's going to take advantage of it. They're going to make you pay just like the Wildcats will.
And to add one more thing, Shane Ham, we were just talking about him, the freshman quarterback. He had 2 picks last week. We were talking about that and the mistakes that they were making. They can't afford to do that. And one big key thing that Coach Tyrell from Hoban was explaining was that there was just a lot of inconsistencies, and they need to clean that up for this week.
Well, and St. Ignatius will tend to do that to you. They've got one of the best secondaries in the state. Well, we've talked a little bit about the Catholic battle going on between Hoban and Mooney down Akron way. We've got another one going on out in the southeast part of Cleveland. It's the Padua Bruins and the Holy Name Greenway. Padua with a 7-0 lead, and the Bruins offense looking for more as they have the ball deep in Holy Name territory, and Peterson finds Pavlich wide open, 27 yards. And the Padua Bruins now lead Holy Name 14-0 as Padua trying to get back to the playoffs for the first time in a number of years and looking pretty good in the early going.
We talked about Kevin Peterson a little bit last year on this show. A big kid, 6'5",
yep.
Big arm, what you want in your quarterback. We didn't talk about him enough, though. I mean, he's a really good quarterback. And now, of course, if his team continues to build off that win from last week, if they can beat Holy Name, get to 2-0, I'm sure we will talk about them more and more. But Trenton Kramer last week, 307 rushing yards. So maybe Padua's got a pretty nice balanced attack going on.
Well, if you remember, they were in the mix to make the playoffs until deep. Last couple of weeks they didn't get it done. So they're looking to take that next step, new head coach, and it'll be really interesting.
Exactly, and I was at that game where Padua was hosting Hoban, a league opponent as well. But this game right here, if they don't already know it, this is a region potential playoff game here that they're going to have to play. So they know very good and well that whoever wins this game is going to have a slight edge on the other team. But first, they got to get it done in week 2. So.
Well, the public schools are going to get angry with me. Another Catholic school battle is backyard rivals out Akron way. Walsh Jesuit taking on St. Vincent-St. Mary. The Knights went and won in Tri-Valley. And here is Luke Lindsay, the sophomore. Olsen goes and grabs it for the touchdown, 12 yards. 7-0, St. Vincent-St. Mary leading the Walsh Jesuit Warriors. Luke Lindsay, a sophomore who started at quarterback as a freshman, looking good. They've also got a sophomore running back in Terrence Keys, who is outstanding as well. So Fighting Irish back where they expect to be, playing well and looking good.
And that's what you live with when you start a young quarterback like that, and we talked about it. Again, something we touched on over and over again last year. St. Vincent-St. Mary couldn't score for so long. Getting offense was so difficult, but one of the reasons you live with that is in the future, maybe you're going to be able to score early like this and score often. And I mean, Walsh, just speaking of teams that can't score, didn't score last week. It seems like it's been a long time since we've seen the Walsh of old
they're
down that way.
But, you know, that tends to happen because Hoban and St. Vincent-St. Mary have been high. They've won state championships, and they're fishing in the same pool, if you, as they like to say. So St. Vincent-St. Mary, a lot of talent and very young.
Well, also as someone who knows that area very well, now Stowe is good, right? And
Hudson.
Walsh kind of used to cherry pick some kids from Stowe when that program was
Hudson
down.
As well.
Yeah, and so now those kids are kind of staying home at Stowe and at Hudson and some of those area publics.
Yeah, and week one was a very tough problem for Zach Wheatman from Walsh Jesuit, but I'm curious to see how he's going to handle St. Vincent-St. Mary when they play. But actually tonight I'm waiting to see who's going to actually get a chance to hold up the acclaimed bell. Walsh Jesuit owns the series, I think 22-19. But yeah, I'm curious at the end of the game. I'm curious to see who's going to be holding this at the end. So.
Still plenty of time. It's in the first quarter. We're going to step aside and take a quick timeout here on the Friday Night Huddle. When we return, more Week 2 action here on Spectrum Sports and cleveland.com.
Crew SC Match Day. Every match, 30 minutes before the kick. Delivering everything fans need to know. With live reports, unmatched analysis, club news, and more. After the game, stay here for Crew SC Post-Match. From the biggest moments to the road ahead, Crew SC Match Day and Crew SC Post-Match. Only on Spectrum Sports. Your team, your school. Spectrum Sports is your home for Flyers athletics. What you live for lives here. The television home of the Dayton Flyers. Spectrum Sports. Flyers volleyball, Sunday at 1 on Spectrum Sports. Exclusively on Spectrum. Tuesday nights are for Ohio college football. Spectrum Sports is teaming up with your favorite site where Ohio State fans gather. 11 Warriors Report. Join the pros from 11 Warriors as they preview the week ahead and deliver everything Scarlet and Gray fans need to know. 11 Warriors Report. Tuesday nights. Only on Spectrum Sports. Exclusively on Spectrum.
The Ohio Lottery's Partners in Education program has been recognizing students and teachers who shine both in and out of the classroom since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com and click on Supporting Education. Students in kindergarten through 12th grade are eligible to be academic all-stars. K through 12 teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible to be honored as the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery's Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Every week, from the locker room to the pitch and everywhere in between, Access Crew SC is your ultimate inside look at the black and gold. Join Marissa Contepelli, Dwight Burgess, and Neil Sika for unmatched coverage, in-depth analysis, and exclusive talks with the players and coaches. This is your club. This is your Access. Access Crew SC, Wednesdays on Spectrum Sports. Lives here. We are Spectrum Sports, exclusively on Spectrum.
Have you ever lived for something? Have you ever dreamt of something? Something more? Something special? Something bigger than yourself? Well, have you?
School sports, Spectrum Sports, exclusively on Spectrum. The final stop, Canton. How you get there? You set objectives. You chase perfection. You do the work. There are many roads to a championship. This week is just one more step. Glenville, St. Edward, Saturday at 7 on Spectrum Sports, exclusively on Spectrum.
Welcome back to Friday Night Huddle. I'm Dave Bacon. Week 2 of high school football across the state of Ohio, along with Dan Labbe from cleveland.com, Nate Cline from cleveland.com. Guys, it's kind of interesting. You know, Aurora, Euclid, a game we touched on. It's an important game especially for the Greenmen. You don't want to start the season 0-2. Puts a lot of pressure on it, and early going, still, you know, very, very close football game.
Yeah, and it's what you'd expect. That's how Aurora wants to play, right? You know, they want to keep the game close and turn it into a defensive battle. Against a team like Euclid, who's so athletic and so explosive, you want to try and make sure they can't use that. And speaking of this being important for Euclid, they're 1-0. They're in that tough Region 1.
Yep.
The more wins you can pile up, even if it's against a lower division team, the better early on in the season.
And on the other side of it, Aurora wants these computer points in a tough region that they're playing in. But here's one match. Here's one player that I'm going to be watching in this game, C.J. Hale from the Euclid football team. He's the quarterback this season. He's a heck of a performer. Threw one touchdown pass and ran for 3 others against Glenville, and they got up really early in that game. So I'm a little bit curious, you know, how is he going to be able to handle this week 2 after all the accolades that he's received so far?
Yeah, you know, we touched on it a little bit last week. Aurora has that streak of 12 straight years that they've been in the playoffs, and you fall behind 0-2, you eliminate a lot of margin for error.
Yeah, and we know Aurora plays that tough schedule, and the big thing for Euclid is big plays. That's what they used against Glenville. You know, we talked about C.J. Hale. Ronald Lee had a couple of big runs last week too, and that's a team that it only takes one play for them to blow a game open, you know, maybe get a 2-score lead, and they've got some guys that can do that.
You know, last week we talked about the Normandy Invaders. They ended that 41-game losing streak. They beat Wellington. They came out, started a winning streak, 45-0. They beat Lincoln West. So congratulations to Brian Darn. It's a great thing to see. I mean, a team that went that long without a win, you turn it around and you go back-to-back. Now all of a sudden you're starting to build some good feelings and some momentum.
And the credit, you know, I'll first start off with Lincoln West first. I know that they're going through their trials right now, trying to get their team up to speed, just the same way Normandy has been fighting these last few years as well. But now Normandy, heck of a job. I'm actually surprised to see what's going to happen with this because, you know, like I talked to one of the 2000, you know, one of the early graduates who played on that last winning team. You know, he said all it takes is just for one win and to see what happens. And obviously, it looks like after that week 1 win, they got that, and now they're off to the races.
Well, we've talked about the Padua Bruins and the Holy Name Green Wave. Padua a 14-0 lead, and their offense is at it again, driving the ball deep into Holy Name territory. Kevin Peterson into the end zone, wide open in the back, Drum with the touchdown that time. 21-0, the Bruins beating their rival from across the town in Parma. 21-0, they lead Holy Name.
He can move a little bit too, showed off his mobility there, a little play action, and rolled to his right and threw the ball into the back of the end zone.
Yeah, if they have an opportunity to go ahead and just finish this game out, you know, they'll put themselves in a great position for the playoffs. Even though it's week 2, but still this win would help. But definitely, you know, Kevin, he had a great week last week, and so it looks like he's trying to continue that work for week 2.
Well, another game that we have been talking about, the Hoban Knights taking on Cardinal Mooney. Hoban with a 7-0 lead, and the Knights deep in Mooney territory. And it's their talented sophomore running back, Diamante Trianum, gets into the end zone, 14-0. So the Knights showing, yeah, we might have lost. It's actually 14-6. I apologize, Antonio Page. I took your touchdown off the board, 14-6. So Hoban did get beat by St. Ignatius, but the Knights offense back on track and rolling against Cardinal Mooney.
The Knights running game was non-existent last week. I think there was a few players that had probably, you know, 30 or 40 yards here and there, but, you know, St. Ignatius said, if we're going to stop something, we're going to stop your running game in this game. But they did a very good job only limiting them 3 points last week. But Hoban looks like they found, they look like they're trying to get that consistency back in their game. So.
Well, and certainly no harm in not being able to run the football against the St. Ignatius Wildcats. And the other thing to keep in mind, you know, the Knights' offense is going to be a work in progress. They're starting a freshman in Ham as a quarterback. As he gets a little bit more comfortable, the game slows down just a bit, they can open up the playbook. I mean, it isn't going to get much tougher than St. Ignatius in your first game for a freshman quarterback.
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I mean, Ham, you know, I mean, 2 interceptions last week. You know, I'm sorry to bring up the stats for him, and I know he's probably something that he doesn't want to think about. But, you know, you got to start from somewhere, and if you got to start from the bottom and work your way up, then do that. But obviously, you know, heck of a performance against the Wildcats, you know, especially, you know, for a freshman, for your first start, you know, that's unbelievable. So obviously it looks like him and the Knights are getting off to a good start here in offense.
And when you only score 3 points in your opener in the game everybody was talking about, you got to sit around all week and think about that. So it's got to feel good to get into the end zone twice tonight against a pretty good football team.
Well, the aforementioned St. Ignatius Wildcats taking on the Menor Cardinals. St. Ignatius had a 3-0 lead, and they were driving the football. Mentioned running the football against Menor is what the Wildcats wanted to do, and they got a pretty good running back in Mark Babinski, and Babinski cuts into the end zone and gets in for the touchdown. That made it 10-0. It is now 10-3 as the Cardinals have added a field goal. So 10-3 as Menor keeps it to a touchdown deficit. But Babinski can run the football a little bit.
A little business handshake at the end of that too. Walks over and gives his offensive lineman a little handshake doing work. I mean, they pushed Menor out of the way, opened up a hole for him, and Babinski, he gets ahead of steam. He's not huge. He's 5'9", but he's a big 5'9".
He runs low to the ground, and he is he was the power back. You know, they had a power and speed combo last year, and the power back is back.
Yeah, once he gets going downhill,
If
stay out of the way.
If last week's game against Hoban was a good indicator, He only had 42 yards rushing last week on 25 carries. You know, that's got to be incredible. So you got to think, man, Hoban must be really good on defense. But Marbinski, it's great to see that he's getting off to a good start right here, right now. They're going to need that, especially Kyle Hall as a quarterback right now. So.
Yeah, they have a young quarterback, and they do have big Darian Kennard and Jack Jamison, two really good linemen. So that will help both Babinski and the young quarterback Kyle Hall, a first-year starter. He is a senior. Time for us to step aside and take another break. We will be right back on Friday Night Huddle here on cleveland.com and Spectrum Sports. Don't go anywhere. More Week 2 highlights straight ahead.
Every week, from the locker room to the pitch and everywhere in between, Access Crew SC is your ultimate inside look at the black and gold. Join Marissa Contebelli, Dwight Burgess, and Neil Sika for unmatched coverage, in-depth analysis, and exclusive talks with the players and coaches. This is your club. This is your Access. Access Crew SC, Wednesdays on Spectrum Sports.
This is it. Your big break. Your one shot. Your only chance. There are two outcomes. Make history or be history.
The home of high school sports. Spectrum Sports. Exclusively on Spectrum.
101 reasons to watch Friday Night Huddle this fall, along with Mark Porter from scoutingabout.com and Nate Cline from cleveland.com. I'm Dave Bacon. Mark, as we talk about linebackers, one guy that is among the best in the country, Dallas Gant, is an Ohio State recruit. You know him pretty well.
Yeah, I've been to a bunch of those games to watch him, and boy, is he athletic. And that, you know, when you talk about linebackers of the future at the college NFL, these guys got to be able to cover running backs. They can't come off the field on third downs. They have to be more athletic than a tailback. And this is what you have. You have a tailback standing over at linebacker with safety, corners-like skills that can play the run like a linebacker and be physical, but also in these passing spread things can walk out over a receiver, walk out on a running back or a tight end and not be worried at all as a defensive coordinator. Unbelievable athlete.
Nate, a guy that seems like he's been at Massillon forever is Jameer Thomas. He's only a junior as well.
Yeah, no offense to the seniors on this list, but I got to go with this junior here on the. This guy plays both sides of the football. He's big, he's fast, and I believe in, and quite naturally, he's going to be kind of a key piece to what Washington does during the regular season.
You look at this list, and there are some guys that really jump out. Xavier Peters from Lakota West, Kentucky. Kentucky's coming in and getting some really good players from Ohio this year.
Yeah, and Xavier Peters read the Alabama and Ohio State tape offers. He's one of those guys that when you see him in a combine setting, looks like he belongs in the NFL right now. Long body, has a lot of room to grow and add weight, but athletic again. A guy that will not come off the field. If he's not fast enough to be covering a running back, he'll be coming off the edge, rushing a tackle, pass rush skills, run stopping skills, pass coverage skills. This is why these guys are elite when they have that many dominating qualities to them.
The The Ohio Lottery's Partners in Education program has been recognizing students and teachers who shine both in and out of the classroom since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com and click on Supporting Education. Students in kindergarten eligible to be academic all-stars. K through 12 teachers can be honored as the Teacher of the Month. Every school that participates is eligible to be honored as the School of the Year. The Ohio Lottery's Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Welcome back to Friday Night Huddle on Spectrum Sports and Cleveland.com. I'm Dave Bacon along with Dan Labbe from Cleveland.com and Nate Cline from Cleveland.com. Guys, kind of an interesting beginning as week 2 gets underway. 10-3 in that St. Ignatius Menor game. Very interesting, and I'm sure we'll be checking in on that as we can throughout the night.
Yeah, it's always, a great rivalry. Teams that we're used to them scoring a ton of points, so kind of early on, that's not really happening yet. Both the defenses seem to be playing fairly well. So we'll kind of see how that plays out as the night goes on.
And in week 1, with St. Ignatius winning that game against Hoban, we already saw kind of the staple that the Wildcats defense was trying to make there. So I'm not surprised that it's going to try to carry week 1. Now Menor just has to respond now.
Well, we've talked about the Hoban Knights taking on Cardinal Mooney. Hoban a 14-6 lead in the first half, and the Knights offense back at it. Ball deep in Cardinal Mooney territory. We've seen a touchdown by Tremonte, and this is the other one. Dickerson, nice job of keeping his balance and getting into the end zone. 21-6, so each of those featured backs has scored a touchdown for the Hoban Knights to go along with the touchdown pass.
So Coach Tyrell, he was one of the first visits I took a visit this summer to go see, and he was really high up on Dickerson and him being able to fit in this offense. But obviously the offense runs with a running back committee. So we're going to see a couple guys in the backfield trying to get some yards and get some scores for the Knights. But in this case, Tyrus was able to run in for his touchdown, 11 yards. And we're going to see how much we see him the rest of this game. So,
yeah, man, that was a really nice run.
Yeah.
Patient run, got behind his lineman and just kind of bowled his way in.
Well, the Brunswick Blue Devils are taking on Austintown Fitch. Brunswick, a new head coach. New head coach came back to Brunswick, Mark Pinzone, taking over. And nice pass over the middle, and a good job as grabbing it as the tight end, Dominic Trzynski, and tackled down inside the 5-yard line. A nice job, and you see Brunswick already with a 7-0 lead. Blue Devils lost to Highland last week in week 1 and rallied and made it very interesting, trying to get into the end zone and push this lead to a 2-score lead against Austintown Fitch, who lost to Hudson last week.
Big target there. Big, fast, broke away after the catch, and now Brunswick in business.
Now, mind you, this is also another Division I potential playoff game here, both in separate regions. But, either way, this win could be big for both of those programs moving ahead.
Nice run, and getting into the end zone is Joshua Stacco, and that will indeed make it a 2-score lead for the Brunswick Blue Devils on the Falcons from Fitch. That big pass to the tight end set up the short run by Joshua Stacco. 14-0, Brunswick with the lead. So Mark Pinzone, who was an assistant on Rich Nowak's teams that were so good for Brunswick, went to Holy Name for a year, then ended up leading Medina Buckeye to 4 straight playoff appearances. And Brunswick went back and said, hey, why don't you come back to your old home where you were an assistant for a long time. And he has Blue Devils looking good in week 2.
Stacco had a pair of touchdowns last week, but what really got the Blue Devils in a hole was that 21-point deficit by halftime against Highland. Highland went on to win that game 28-14. However, the Blue Devils have to find a way to put some more points on the board. They just didn't make enough plays last week in week 1, and so they're going to get a chance, opportunity to do that against Austintown Fitch in week 2.
One of the games we have a reporter at is Solon at Twinsburg. Bryant Kaiser joins us on the phone. Bryant, what's going on with the Tigers and Comets?
We're at halftime. Solon leads 7-0. A Raphael 68-yard touchdown pass at the end of the first quarter. That has been the only score so far. Both teams has fumbled the ball and made a lot of miscues. A big miscue by Twinsburg Tigers defensive back led to that touchdown. If it wasn't for that, it would still be 0-0. And if, nobody can get nothing going in today's game.
How have the Tigers looked? Young team, a lot of juniors starting. How have they hung in there against the Comets?
Well, whoever played Thomas Wilkes in practice doing Twinsburg, they really got his number today. The defense has really stepped up. Every time he's trying to go wide right or wide left, they've been waiting on him and putting him down. They're just faced with 2nd and 17, 3rd and 35. And it's been a long day for the offense for Solon.
How has Twinsburg's offense fared? Young guys again. You know they've got a couple of big play receivers in Edgerson. McLean is their running back. How have the Tigers looked when they've had the football?
Solon has shut them down as well. Twinsburg, they fumbled their first possession. They fumbled their third possession. They had caught only 2 passes was completed to number 88. That was
Edgerson.
Yeah. And that was for a memorable game. So it really has been bottled them up as well. So it's been a defensive struggle so far.
All right, Bryant Kaiser, we will check back in with him. 7-0 at halftime, Solon leading Twinsburg. But, you know, if you're Mike Bell, you have to be pretty happy. Your young team is hanging in there against a playoff team.
Yeah, and, we heard Bryant tell us how they were handling Thomas Wilkes, who did so much damage against Aurora. For Solon, they've been here before. Last week, trouble scoring, ended up squeaking out a 15-14 win. So for Twinsburg, you like where you are. You wish you had some points, but you like where you are. Anytime a game is at halftime at 8 o'clock, there's not much offense.
Rashad Jones-Lands and James Grammons, both of them had 3 tackles last week in their victory for the Twinsburg Tigers. But those are probably the 2 reasons why, Solon's having a tough time trying to run the football against the Tigers. And, even though Bell was really excited during the offseason when we were talking about the team and coming back to share as excited as what he was about the offense, he really felt confident about the defense and how that could be a staple for the program this season.
Yeah, they've got a junior linebacker, Isaiah Sabat, who has really stepped up as well. That's another one that I know Coach Bell was very, very high on. So 7-0, and if you're Solon, you're used to these games. That's your calling card for Solon has been that defense, and obviously, shutting out Twinsburg at this point at half. That's good defensive effort.
Yeah, and if you can get Thomas Wilkes going, that's kind of the key, right? Figure out a way to get Thomas Wilkes going. He'll help your quarterback situation get better. And we know Solon is so good forcing turnovers as well that if maybe they can get one of those. They're a team that can take a 7-0 lead and turn it into a 21-0 lead pretty quickly if they get a turnover, if they get their running game going. So Twinsburg still has to be very careful even though it's close.
Let's check in on the phone. Ryan Isley joins us from the Hoban Cardinal Mooney game. Ryan, how have the Knights looked? We've seen some of the highlights you've sent. How have the Knights looked from your perspective? Ryan.
They've had a couple of lapses defensively, allowing Youngstown Cardinal Mooney to pick up yards. Last time I talked to you, they had just given up the touchdown. But since that point, the only positive play really that Youngstown Mooney had was on basically a broken play at the end of the half where they had to go pretty much the distance in 7 seconds, and Hoban just kind of went into a prevent and just wanted to make sure that they didn't score. Since that point, the Hoban offense has actually been rolling a lot better than they did last week. Obviously last week against the tough St. Ignatius program. Tonight it has been Shane Ham finally coming into his own, maybe in his second start as a freshman here at Hoban. He has thrown for 115 yards so far, just 2 incompletions, and his favorite target has been Garrett Hauser. I sent along a couple of those highlights, and they have been really good balls, but really good catches by Hauser as well.
What about the running game? We've seen a couple of the touchdowns. How have the Knights running backs done?
The running backs have done what you would think the Knights running backs would do and what Coach Tim Tyrell has hoped they would do. They were bottled up a little bit last week, but this week the holes have been there, and they are hitting the holes the way they need to hit them. I talked to Coach Tyrell before the game, and he told me that was one thing they emphasized this week was making sure they hit the holes. They said in some of the scrimmages against the opponents that maybe didn't have as good of a defense, they thought they could just hit the holes, and make their own holes. He said you've got to learn to run behind your offensive line. Tonight they've done that with Dickerson and with Trainum. They both have a touchdown run tonight. They've both been sharing the carries, and they've both been picking up chunks of yardage to help out this Hoban offense, and that, again, has opened up the passing game for freshman quarterback Shane Ham, who has looked very poised under center tonight for the Knights offense.
Yeah, Ryan, I think when Coach Tyrell scheduled the Ignatius Wildcats in week 1, it was like, okay, guys, we've won a couple of state championships. Now I'm going to show you what we need to improve on, and it looks like his team is kind of taking that message. Do you get that sense?
I absolutely get that sense, and I agree 100% that that's what he was doing. The only thing that makes that a little more difficult as well is you think about it, they lose a quarterback like Danny Clark, a running back like Todd Sibley, and you turn the reins over to a freshman quarterback, and his first game is against St. Ignatius. That's an eye-opening experience and kind of a welcome to high school football kid kind of moment. He didn't look – I don't think he looked rattled. I was here last week as a spectator. I didn't think he looked that rattled last week. But, again, that's a great Ignatius defense over there. And tonight he looks a lot more comfortable making decisions, making reads. When it's not there, he pulls it down and runs the football. He's not afraid to take a hit. He's been very impressive in the first half of football, especially for a freshman.
All right, Ryan, we appreciate it very much. We'll check back in with Ryan Isley. And of course, the message is Shane Ham, it isn't going to get any tougher than this. It's only going to get easier as you face St. Ignatius in your first start. And it's good to hear that the freshman is playing well for the Hoban Knights.
Yeah, that's a good bounce back for him, and you're absolutely right. You go against something really difficult that first week, the next week, maybe the game slows down a little bit. Just naturally, the game slows down a little bit because the opponent isn't a team like St. Ignatius. Nothing but good news on the Hoban front.
And even though the Hoban Knights did lose that game, there were some great moments during that game that Hoban was doing, and Shane Ham was a part of that. Some of those swing passes, those passes out into the flats, they were getting into the teeth of the Wildcats defense, but they just couldn't do it on a consistent basis. And so it looks like in week 2 they're cleaning up those mistakes and they're finding the end zone now a little bit more often.
Well, St. Ignatius facing the Menor Cardinals. When last we talked to you, St. Ignatius had a 10-3 lead, but it's the Menor Cardinals. Their offense is going to get rolling. And Menor's offense, Tatis Tatarunas finds Logan Shea for a touchdown. And just like that, this one is all tied up, 10-10, just before halftime.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Menor does. They just have that ability to score and score quickly, and then that was a nice little we see that play all the time for Menor. Just a quick pass to one of their receivers and then go get in the end zone.
And this is week 2, and we're going to try to be sympathetic to that. But just Tatis finished the game last week with 188 yards. But as we're noticing, even in week 1, they got off to a slow start. So I'm wondering at some point, 1, will they pull a win off in this game? But then 2, will they be able to start getting over those humps in the first quarter where they can start getting a little bit more active on offense as well? So again, game's a little bit tighter now, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and you have to kind of take it all in the big picture as far as Tatarunas goes. I mean, he didn't need to throw the ball because we've seen the gaps that Edmonds was running through. They put 49 points on the board. That's a pretty good indication the offense was doing what it could do.
Yeah, I think their offense is going to be all right.
Yeah, the defense stopping the run, that'll determine how far they go. Yep. I mean, that's always the way it is, without question.
But Toppin's going to make it hard for the Cardinals on defense. I mean, he picked apart the Hoban offense last week, and I'm pretty sure he's going to try to do it again tonight. He did get his 3rd interception of the season already earlier in the game. Mm-hmm. So Toppin comes away with his 3rd interception. Well, we're approaching halftime in most of the games. Some of them might be
getting into that third quarter. We're going to take a quick timeout, and the Solon Comet Marching Band will take us to break. You're watching Friday Night Huddle.
Every week, from the locker room to the pitch and everywhere in between, Access Crew SC is your ultimate inside look at the black and gold. Join Marissa Contepelli, Dwight Burgess, and Neil Sika for unmatched coverage, in-depth analysis, and exclusive talks with the players and coaches. This is your club. This is your Access. Access Crew SC, Wednesdays on Spectrum Sports.
This is it. Your big break. Your one shot. Your only chance. There are two outcomes. Make history or be history.
The home of high school sports. Spectrum Sports. Exclusively on Spectrum. Your team, your school. Spectrum Sports is your home for Flyers athletics. What you live for lives here. The television home of the Dayton Flyers. Spectrum Sports. Flyers volleyball, Sunday at 1 on Spectrum Sports. Exclusively on Spectrum. Crew SC Match Day. Every match, 30 minutes before the kick. Delivering everything fans need to know. With live reports, unmatched analysis, club news, and more. After the game, stay here for Crew SC Post-Match. From the biggest moments to the road ahead, Crew SC Match Day and Crew SC Post-Match. Only on Spectrum Sports.
The Ohio Lottery's Partners in Education program has been recognizing students and teachers who shine both in and out of the classroom since 2007. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com and click on Supporting Education. Students in